Hello, friends. I'm Maggie Ostara, and I'm a sovereignty mentor and a human design expert. And I like to share with you the human design perspective on what's going on for us astrologically, because it adds another dimension that is different than what you would get from the astrologers. And today we're going to talk about the very beginning of Gemini season. And what does it mean also that Uranus has just entered Gemini? And then we're going to have the sun in Gemini. What does that mean for us? And we have a particular configuration, which is a harbinger of our shift into the cross of the sleeping phoenix, which happens next year. But we've already been feeling this as our background energy. You probably heard about the prophecy of 2027 from in human design, and it does have to do with this change in the background energy. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit today, point it out in the chart that we're going to be in right now, so that you can start to get a feeling really for what this change is like, and you can get a sense of how it's actually already operational, and it's been operational for a while. So let's go ahead and dive into all of the particulars. So Gemini season starts today, May 20th, was the sun moves into Gemini. And then I'm going to focus a little bit more starting tomorrow on the 21st, because that is when the sun moves into the gate 20. But first, let's talk a little bit about Gemini. So Gemini is known as the twins and is ruled by Mercury and is very mental, intellectual, fast mind, right? Mercury is really fast. We associate this with communication because Mercury is the god of communication. And Uranus will be in Gemini roughly about 7 years, and in this gate 20 for the coming year, all the way through May of 2027. So that's a relatively long transit inside of this gate. Let's first just talk about Uranus going through Gemini, and in particular, how this is going to work in terms of our mental function. Because like I said, okay, so Gemini is, it's very active, is a busy mind, brilliant mind, and Uranus is all about intuition. Uranus is about freedom, about liberation, about truth. And so one of the things that will be happening as we're going through the gates in the human design system, most of which are actually on the throat, in Gemini, only one of them is not on the throat, and how it's going to be activating and really uplifting our communication skills, right? And our awareness of our communication. But what I want to point out here is, because Uranus is this god of awakening, I think one of the big things that we can all look forward to and pay attention to is how Uranus is going to be breaking up our attachment of the overly busy, overly analytical mind, which tends to diminish us to a relatively small portion of what we really are, because it cuts out our intuition. Our analytical mind has been trained to really look at what we think of as the logic circuit in human design, or left-brained energy, which is logical and strategic and analytical and linear and all of that. And even though the right brain and the left brain are constantly in communication with each other, we do have an emphasis from that left brain with those type of qualities. And our culture has been very influenced by Western science, which likes to count things and categorize things and analyze things, right? It's what we think of that kind of left brain energy. It tends to be more linear. It's also materially focused, likes to focus on just what we can touch, what we can count, right? What we can work with in material reality, or in 3D reality, if you will, right? What's physical. And Uranus is all about intuition, as I said, right? Uranus is very much kind of like in that expanded relationship to the cosmos. Uranus is considered kind of galactic energy. And so Uranus can be disrupting the way that we've found ourselves kind of locked into a relatively confined way of thinking if we're only thinking about things strategically or logically, and we're not thinking about them intuitively or creatively. So we can really look forward to a shifting around our relationship to how our minds work when we learn to work with Uranus. Let's remember that Mercury is also very changeable. right? If you think of what Mercury, the element, is like, right? It's bubbles around and it's mercurial. It changes, it flows, and so on. And so Mercury is also that way and is a bit of a shapeshifter, right? It's like can change from this way to that way. We've got the twins, right? Are you going to be like this personality or this personality, right? And can be considered a kind of magical, even like a magician, can change things from one form into another. And so there's a lot of different qualities here, and it'll be fun, I think, for us to be looking at how we can tap into this beautiful energy of Uranus to be saying, okay, how can we disrupt the programming that we've had that have led us to really be living out of a fraction of who we really are, not so that we just get rid of all of that, because we need that part of us, but we want to balance it out with the rest of us, right? We want our intuition, we want our creativity to be alive as well. So Uranus is already in the gate 20, and then the sun is going to join Uranus on the 21st, bringing even more energy into that gate, the gate 20. So let's talk about the gate 20. The gate 20 is known as Metamorphosis in traditional human design. It's known as contemplation in the I Ching, or patience in quantum human design. And this energy is about being able to be present in this moment and to be paying attention to what's going on now, and not to try to push forward before it's the right time. So not projecting too much into the future and saying, okay, we're going to push forward into the future. Really being here now and paying attention to what is the energy, what needs to happen before action can take place, what people need to be involved, what preparation needs to happen. How are we going to know when the time is right? It's like being able to tune into that sense of patience for right timing. It's over here on the throat center, and it's part of some very complex wiring over here on the right side of the body and the left-hand side of the chart, which is the integration circuit. And it is also part of the channel of charisma, the channel 3420, which is known as the fastest channel, the most powerful channel in the chart, because it connects the sacral center to the throat. So as the sun enters the gate 20, the earth is going to enter the gate 34, and it's going to define this whole channel and the throat and the sacral center. So this is bringing in a lot of extra definition. I know for me, it's going to define my throat because it's going to connect all of this wiring I have down here that actually isn't connected to the throat. So this is going to give me manifesting generator energy. Everyone will be a manifesting generator while the sun and the earth are in this. It's about 5 days long. So you can look forward to that. But what I wanted to emphasize here, this channel is a part of the channel of the sleeping phoenix, which, as I said, is the incoming energy of the kind of background frequency that is set by the current incarnation cross. So we've had the cross of planning as our background energy for the last 400 years. And then the cross of the sleeping phoenix is we're transitioning into it right now. They say it's February 2027, but we're already transitioning into it. And so I wanted to point out, and you can see it here in this image, that we've got that 3420, which is part of the cross of the sleeping phoenix, in the sun and the earth, but then we also have the nodes are in the rest of the cross of the sleeping phoenix. So we've got the south node in the gate 59 and the north node in the gate 55. Now, I did do another video, and I'll link it down below, about the nodes moving into the 55 and the 59. So I went into that in some depth so you can get more of a sense of what that is and how it's influencing us as we go into this cross of the sleeping phoenix. But I wanted to just bring up here during this 5-day period, starting on the 21st, that we are going to have all of the energies of that cross of the sleeping phoenix really lit up so that we get a chance to feel it ahead of time, right? Well, the sun and the earth move into those two gates every year around this time, but the nodes aren't usually lighting up the other two gates. So it is a special alignment. So let's talk a little bit about the cross of the sleeping phoenix. So the previous cross, the cross of planning, highlighted the channel 4037, which is known as the channel of the bargain or the channel of administration. And it is tribal circuitry, and it's where contracts live and agreements live. And it was very much an energy that supported us to be creating civilizations, to be creating new agreements with many, many people, and to be creating cities and civilization. And so it really reaped the benefit of that during this time. And now we're shifting more into individual circuitry, individual energy. This 3420 is individual circuitry, and it's in the knowing circuit in particular. And the gate 55 is also in the knowing circuit. It's also individual circuitry. And the gate 59 is the only one that is not individual circuitry, and it's in the tribal circuit. So let's just talk a little bit about this knowing circuit and this individual circuitry. So individual circuitry is here to be different. It's here to bring change. It does not fit in. It's mutative by nature, and it is where the evolutionary impulse of humanity runs through the human design chart. So it's this really evolutionary change agent kind of energy. And so that is what we're going to be leaning into during this time. Now, I know some people, in particular, the founder of human design, thought that this was going to be a pretty negative time when everybody was going to be just out for themselves. But I think if we look at it instead as really us developing our own personal sovereignty even more, and how our expression of sovereignty is going to be something that many of us are going to be exploring. And then we're going to be leaning into how are we developing our sovereignty and also being in relationship with each other and also being in community. Because as we move into the age of Aquarius, which is what we're doing right now, that is also known as a time of community, but it's also individual. I love what Heather Unsworth, the astrologer, says about this. She calls it the sovereignty of self in the sanctity of community aligned with cosmic consciousness. I love that. I really feel that strongly as far as that energy of Pluto in Aquarius, which of course is quite revolutionary and is very much devoted to freedom as well, the same way that Uranus is. And so what I want to suggest is that this is really the kind of the liberation of each of us on an individual basis from so much of the programming that we've had about how we're supposed to fit in. We're supposed to conform. We're supposed to, kind of soften our edges or clip our wings so that we can be part of the tribe, so that we can be acceptable, so that we don't ruffle feathers and we put other people in front of us, which of course women have been conditioned to do forever, right? And so we get to break out of that a bit into saying, okay, yeah, but what kind of power do I have? What kind of charisma do I have? What can I create with this incredible energy that comes through that 3420? This is powerful manifesting generator energy, right? So we're going to be able to be creating powerfully as individuals. And part of our challenge, if you will, or our opportunity is how do we really foster that in each other, acknowledge it and appreciate it, and at the same time create communities where we can also be interdependent, not codependent, but interdependent, where we recognize that we are all in this together and that we actually do need each other so that we can foster that and at the same time acknowledge our individuality, our self-determination, our autonomy, right? But still be sovereign beings in community together. This is really the core of what my book is about, is how do we, yes, grow our individual sovereignty on the inner landscape, but then how do we relate to other sovereign beings in the world? So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, it's called Feminine Sovereignty, 8 Pillars for Regenerating Ourselves and Our World. And I'll put the link for where you can get that down in the description below if you're interested in diving into that more specifically. To say here that we are already in this kind of time of the individual, time of the sovereign. We had all of these planets that were lit up in Aries, right? And so that is a lot of sovereign energy that's been coming through. There's still many planets that are in Aries. There's still a lot of sovereign energy that is being activated by the planets. So this isn't something that is just done, right? It is something that we're still learning to cultivate inside of ourselves. And then like I said, I think the additional challenge is how are we also going to really honor each other and be in community together as we create new decentralized ways of being in the world as the old structures of the old world break down. So it's definitely individual energy, but the other thing is it's highly intuitive. The knowing circuit is not logical, rational, or any of that. And I was noting earlier that our culture, really steeped in Western science, really sees that kind of logical knowing as primary, right? And kind of dismisses most other ways of being. And yet now we're going to have this highly intuitive energy, which is our background frequency. And it's going to invite us to be able to really tune inside ourselves so that we can get more in touch with our inner guidance and not be looking outside of ourselves so much to other people as our reference point, which we do when we're more in community, as we tend to look outside ourselves more. So with this intuitive energy, we tap into our intuition when we go inside. We don't tap into our intuition when we're paying attention to things out there. Not so much, right? We can feel things, we might get hits about things, but it's really when we want a deep intuitive knowing. That is when we go inside. So this is going to foster our ability to turn away from all of the noise that is going on in the outer landscape. And that is really the things that are being rattled by the old order breaking apart and falling down, and enabling us to tune into a higher truth, a deeper truth that the planets are certainly inviting us into and pointing out for us, but you can probably also feel inside yourself even now. I think this is actually going to be tremendous support for us as we are realizing that so many things that we were taught were actually not true. You know, we're in an age of disclosure. Whether that has to do with disclosure that's coming through the Epstein files and all of the different things that are being revealed there, or whether that has to do with extraterrestrials and UFOs, and that there's more and more information that's now being released about that in fact we have had extraterrestrials here on the planet, not just being channeled, but actually physically here on the planet. More and more of that is coming out. We're going to see more of that in the year to come. And so we're at this place where if we're tuning into this new information and these new perspectives, where we're realizing, you know, a lot of the people and institutions that we put our confidence into, right? We really believed in them, and we allowed them to lead us and to believe that they had our best interests at heart. And to be realizing, no, actually, not so much. And I know that's a lot to digest. And, you know, I don't know what degree to which you are diving into that. I do encourage you to pay attention to the degree that you can digest in your nervous system without getting overwhelmed. And, you know, for me, I just tap into little bits because I don't want to get too involved in it. And yet I do want to get the information and see all of the things that have been going on that we haven't been told about before. Some of it I've known about for a long time, but I haven't necessarily believed it in the way that I am now. And I know I feel like I am needing to give an apology to some people who have told me about a lot of these things before. And I was like, I wasn't so much dismissive as I was like, I don't know how that fits into my world right now, so I'm not going to try to digest it. But as it's coming out more and more, I think that this individual energy, this knowing circuit in particular, will support us because it helps us to know the deepest truths are right in here. They are inside of us. We can access them through our own connection to superconsciousness. We don't need the media to tell us what's true. We don't need our teachers to tell us what's true. I think this is really the end of the age of the guru, right? Where we, really revered certain experts and certain teachers and idolized people and that kind of thing. I think we're just really done with that as this individual circuitry is coming in. And as we've seen so many people that maybe we put our confidence in before have actually, are not in integrity and sometimes doing really, damaging things to other people and actually to sometimes large groups of people. And so we want to be able to navigate this, but not navigate it, in my view, through revenge or trying to be too, powerful against, so much as saying, okay, how can we shift what it is that we're expressing and experiencing in our own individual lives? How can we receive the guidance that comes to us from superconsciousness, through that knowing circuit, through that gate 61, but then it's going to come in through that 3420 and it's going to be there through the 55, right? How can we tap into that and allow it to transform the way that we engage with the world? And manifestor generator energy is fast, right? It's why the manifesting generators have been renamed time benders in quantum human design, because it's fast. It's fast and it's powerful. And one caution around that is, I've done many readings for people with the 3420, and one of the challenges that they can have is that they are really, really busy running around in circles, that they can get a little lost and spin because of the speed of that energy. So if you start to notice that about yourself, if you notice, and here we have like the sun in Gemini, right? And Uranus is in Gemini. So that's speeding everything up already, right? And if you notice things start to speed up for you, and I certainly have been feeling that, and time seems to be speeding up like crazy, all the more important for you to be cultivating your ability to go into the still and quiet place inside yourself, right? That's really, really important for you to be able to do. And I know that it is challenging for a lot of us to be able to tap into that inner knowing, because we're so like this, right? And also we have so many emotions, right, that are distorting our ability to hear and to feel that place. So if you've been following me for a while, you know that I've been saying this for quite some time, which is really that shift from being overly mentally active into the wisdom of the heart. I'm certainly not the only person who is talking about this, because this is the main character of the shift of our time, is being able to move really from more of that mental processes, and especially that more analytical way of understanding things, into a more heart-centered way, which is going to be more feeling and more sensing, and rather than being so illogical and mental. Just know if you get challenged with this, you can call on Uranus, who is already going to be disrupting being too rigid, right? And being too confined in only one way of being, especially if it's not intuitive, and helping us to open up our ability to really tap into our intuition. And for me, this is like the main thing that we work with, like, for example, in our Sovereign Sisterhood, which is my global community, where we're always looking at how are we activating and embodying this shift from living more analytically to living more from our hearts, more from a sensing state, more from more compassion. That shift is really critical right now. And so I encourage you to be working with that in whatever way is meaningful for you, and also to recognize that, the energy on our planet right now is very, very intense. We have been having so many solar storms, so much energy coming from the sun and coming from the galactic center that are activating the planet, and then, of course, activating all of us. The Schumann resonance has been like, which is the frequency of the earth, has been like going up and down and crazy. So just to know, it's a good time to be taking good care of yourself, be taking care of the people that you are that you care about, that are in your life, to be giving each other, the benefit of the doubt if we get activated, if we're too, sharp or fiery with each other, right? And to realize that this is our training ground, if you will, of moving into this new world age, of moving into the age of Aquarius, moving into the new earth, where so many of the ways that we have operated and so many of the things that we counted on and so many of the things that we believe that were true are not going to be there anymore. And also many of them turn out to be really different when you look under the hood, if you will. And so we need our connection to our own higher self and our own inner being to support us, because otherwise we get really, afraid, disappointed, despairing, and that can lead us into anger. It can lead us into the desire for revenge, for trying to make other people pay for things that they've done. And that's just feeding the conflict. It's just feeding the war energy. And so the more that we can tap into our intuition, which will never encourage you to be violent, it will never encourage you to do revenge, because your intuition is your higher self, which is always going to leave you in the direction of compassion. So that's my transfer report for this week. Next week, I'll be back to talk about the blue moon that is happening in Sagittarius on the 31st. Yes, it's the second full moon in 1 month. So in the meantime, take good care, as I said, and make sure you go outside, put your feet on the ground, sit at the base of a tree, just be in awe at nature. If you're here in the Northern Hemisphere, the flowers are everywhere. Just move out of being in a contracted, bracing state and see if you can expand into the beauty of the living world. Many, many blessings. Much love.